We are all natives to some land, but indigenous peoples have long been stewards of nature, protecting our rights and preserving their cultural ways of living. Despite enduring horrific colonial practices, which continue to affect them, they play a crucial role in addressing modern environmental challenges. Their deep respect and connection with Mother Earth fosters a sense of oneness with nature. In today's episode, we are grateful to welcome Casey Camp-Horinek and celebrate her life as she completes another turn around the sun. She's an environmental ambassador of the Ponca Nation, a traditionalist, wisdom keeper, speaker, author, actor, and drumkeeper of the Ponca Patatas Women's Scalp Dance Society. Hello and welcome back to the We Need to Act podcast, a platform dedicated to dialogue and education. I'm Sarah, your host, and I truly appreciate the time you are taking to listen to this episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, doing so is the best way to support our show and help us continue to bring on amazing guests. And if you find that this is not for you, you can always unsubscribe it later. Back to today's episode, Casey is an elder of the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma and has been at the forefront of the global indigenous rights of nature movement for over a decade. She has been instrumental in drafting the International Indigenous Women's Treaty, which protects the rights of Mother Earth, and in the adoption of the first rights of nature and rights of river statutes by a tribal nation in Turtle Island. Casey firmly believes that indigenous solutions are the answer to climate chaos. It is a great honor, beyond words, to have you join the We Need to Act podcast. And I have a deep respect for your work and everything that you represent. So thank you for accepting my invitation. And I'm so looking forward to listening to you.
Good morning.
So I would like to start by asking you, you began your campaign for native and human rights, environmental justice for the Ponca people, and the preservation of land and nature in the 70s. What changes have occurred since then?
I guess first I need to clarify that being born an Indigenous woman, a Ponca woman, was the beginning of anything in my life as far as caring for Mother Earth, caring about my people's continuing existence here on Mother Earth, to be able to uplift the voices of my mother and grandmothers and aunties that taught me, as well as to make a way for my sons and daughters to be raised in a manner that had a value system that made sense, living and walking this road that was on the road towards destruction, not by our choice, but by the forced removal from our homelands, by the people who decided that they were more capable than we were about deciding our education and what was valuable and what was not. So entering into the 70s, and I was a young mother by that time. My firstborn daughter, Madideche, Joya, was born in 70. My son, Dandina Huge, Mikasi, was born in 73 during the Wounded Knee occupation. My daughter, Lizeche, was born in 76 and was when we were moving even further into what was the Red Power era of history here. And my son, Hadima, or Jeff Mali Khude, was born in 79 as we were moving into a different era. And the difference is stark. It has been subtle. But if one really looks at how things were at that time, They're very different now in many ways, and also very much the same with the present administration here, who models himself after Andrew Jackson, the worst, what they call the Indian killer, and his policies towards the Red Nations. So, if one looked at the fact that at that time we weren't playing ourselves in film, uh, we there was red face out there. If we looked at sovereignty and self determination, there was very little of that. If we looked at the boarding school issues, it was still very much in play at that time. If we looked at policy making and who was making the decisions on our behalf within our own governmental structure, it was very different. Those were still being decided by the federal government. If one looked at awareness of indigenous people, of native people, of Ponca people, there was none. All throughout the United States and perhaps throughout the world, we, as well as other indigenous people, were looked at as historical characters, as obstacles that were overcome by the colonizers, as people who had been uh, erased, and that we didn't have modern day stories, that we weren't continuing our own history. Uh, and certainly with the women, it had implications that were very demeaning about who we were. The Pocahontas story, the sexualizations, the missing and murdered women that had happened from the very beginning of anyone coming onto our shores, when we had a very balanced society at one time. So I see a lot of those changes and more. I'm just skimming the top here. But there's also very much the sameness in the terms of how the way that our viewpoint is about the manner in which we live on Earth is still very compromised and very either romanticized or ignored. So rather than understanding that the reasons that we have these connections to the land, the water, and the air is that as a species, as a spiritual being, we recognize the connections are often looked at as, again, a romanticized ideal that people have kind of made up instead of understanding that this is a natural way of being. And as a matter of fact, all humans at some point in their own history, no matter what place on earth they came from or what race they chose to call themselves, also understood that the interdependence of all species depends on how we all treat each other, the plants, the animals, the trees, the rains. And so, as we enter into this new time they call climate change, and for us, we all have different ways of expression. Um, I think that the human species has kind of awakened a little bit to the fact that this is not just some beautiful idea that, oh, isn't that pretty, they respect nature. No, we realize that we are entering into a crisis mode, and we've been saying this for generations, and now other people are recognizing that.
That's so true. And I was recalling, I have some friends in Canada, Indigenous friends, Anishinaabe, and they told me about the boarding school and the bad things they had to endure. It's so sad. It's really sad. And
No, it's a crime. It's not just sad, it's a horrific crime.
yeah, the abuse he suffered, and yeah, it's really, really, well, crime. And as you said, we have taken so much for granted, and what was once considered sacred Sacred in nature is now treated merely as a resource in a culture that prioritizes immediacy. How did we reach a point where there is little respect for present and future generations?
One thing I would ask us all to do is what I talk to my own children and others about is to take the RE off of resource. What does that tell you about what those truly are? They're not a monetary system that happens to be growing as a tree and not looking like a chair. They are sources of life. They have a life of their own, but they also offer a gift to us as humans. With the green things, of course, we're breathing in what they breathe out, etc. There is a reciprocal way of being. Not all things should be looked at as resources, as the present administration is doing to look at Greenland and saying, yeah, we think we'll just take that. For me, this leads back to the doctrine of discovery. And I believe I know it was in the 1400s, I don't recall the exact year, maybe 13, and a papal bull edict that literally says that if you are, I may have that someplace really handy so I can be clear on what I'm trying to share with you. And the papal bull edict was made when the people were ready to, quote and unquote, discover America and exploring across the world, um, and wanted to find a way to either spiritually be condoned or cover themselves legally. Doctrine of Discovery was 1452, and it's said to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ, wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever, held and possessed by them, and reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit. And this was Pope Nicholas V, papal bull of 1452. That set a series of events in place. So when the invaders came to our lands, for instance, Turtle Island, what's now called the United States, Canada, or Africa, or wherever, South America, any of the islands in between, set up not only for them a spiritual opening to say, okay, if you're not Christian, then this is what we will do to you. And they literally wiped out tens of thousands, millions of us here under that law that they were fostering, and created a situation that allowed the entire area to be totally theirs, and did reduce us to a situation of slavery, etc. And that is still being used as recently, I believe it was 2006, in a ruling by Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the Supreme Court on a land case between an Indigenous Peoples here and someone who wanted that land. So when we talk about where did the change start, maybe it was before, maybe it was after, but certainly that played into the mindset of ownership of the earth herself, and that mankind, could then, what do they say? They have dominion over the earth within that Bible that they follow, and reduced all living things to simply that thing that's called a resource.
Oh, it's so true what you said about the not the resource but the source of everything. And as a Portuguese, I'm so ashamed by our past because we were engaged in the discoveries and enslaved people from Africa and Brazil and many other places. And it is horrific, as you said, what happened. And it continues to happen nowadays, not called slavery, but in the capitalist system, we still have slaves. And you once said that everything is a learning experience. Can we relearn the old ways in our modern, greedy world?
We're also a species with a living spirit within us, with intellect, with emotional connections, and with the knowledge that has drifted down. That's a cellular knowledge in virtually every species. Science now tells us that we're correct when we talk about blood memories, that we're correct when we talk about being part of the stardust that is universal, that we're correct in understanding that indeed this water body that we inhabit, that is made of flesh, bone, muscle, and all of those organs, and imbued with the spirit of water, that we're correct in understanding that there is guidance in that. And these are very, if one has to look at Western science and combine it with indigenous science, we're all indigenous to this world somewhere at some point. We didn't always come from societies that were those that were the takers, but those that were part of the system they lived in, whether it was in a rural farm in Ireland or anywhere else. That's just an example where we were dependent on the cycles of the earth. We were dependent on keeping the water clean that we drank from. We were dependent on the other species that coexisted with us for our livelihood. We cared for one another. We cared for those systems around us, and we lived within those systems. So it's not a foreign concept. It's not as if we don't all have that knowledge already. It's about when do we enact that? When do we take responsibility to be that person that steps up and says, unless we find the balance again, our species will not continue on the earth. Our species is on its way to extinction because of our behavior. We're not necessary to this cycle of life. In fact, we have harmed everything. So it's not that it's an unreachable goal, or that every human inside them doesn't long for it. You put a child outside and see how they relate to the grass under their feet and the sunshine on their bodies, and smelling a flower or chasing a butterfly or picking up a stick and it becomes a magic wand. It's yeah, that's normal, that's natural, and that's us.
Yeah, that's a great example. I was thinking about my son. He's a 6 year old and he does that.
Hmm.
So everything is
I'm sure
magical.
you did too.
Yeah. And what role do Indigenous people play in guiding us toward a more harmonious relationship with nature?
I think it's the role not only of our self uh, awareness and desire, responsibility to the relationships that we have, but also one that I came as a surprise to me, perhaps in the 90s and beyond, when people began to listen to the manner in which we spoke of Earth, and wondering why it is that the same question you asked, why they had lost that connection. What makes that connection through us is that we haven't had, my mother was the first born in a in captivity on a reservation in 1914 of the generations of Ponca people. And my grandfather, my and others were on the forced removal. So the colonization process has been relatively recent in our history. We haven't moved away from that deliberately. We have had the land base taken. We have had laws that were put around us by the Bureau of Indian Affairs where we have to have CDIB cards, a certified degree of Indian blood. We have to, we were confined to reservations, which were really just POW camps. We were stripped of our language, and but the inner core has remained tied to all that is, all of our relations. And the original teachings still come through to many of us that are able to escape the confines of what society deems valuable to them, which is, all of you sit in a row in a school, all of you learn the same things. Your grades are based on how well you assimilate within your peer group. And then you all get out and you get a job and you continue to destroy all that's around you and become a society that is merely those that are the takers. The economy grows because of people like that, but it is a false economy with money is just a theoretical thing, just like the time clock is. It's all theoretical. What is real is the growing things, the water and the rain that falls, the wind that blows, the sun that rises, and the moon that keeps rhythm, and the Mother Ocean. Our relationship with each other as humans, our relationship to the other living beings, and all things are living. Those are what has set us into a place that the responsibility we carry and the love and the honor of those living things has lifted our voices to the forefront of the environmental movement, and also the desire to, in our case, I work a lot with movement rights. I work with Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, and of course within my own tribe and family, has lifted us into a situation that people can say, hey, that makes sense. You know, we kind of think it might be nice not to be suffering from climate change. We kind of believe that it might be nice for us to be, as some of them say, live like a village and all care for each other. It's necessary. It's flatly necessary at this time to do so.
Yeah, and we have lost a sense of community, and
Hmm.
it's so important, as you said. We don't know how to relate to one another.
Which is what your podcast is doing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the new things that come along in the ways of
Mhm.
technology are or can enhance that, our sense of community, our sense of connectedness.
Yeah, at least I'm trying to and listen to create a dialogue with different people, with different perspectives, and also open this space for Indigenous people, which I think it's really important. So, how can we walk the red road, pursue a path of oneness with the Creator, and become good ancestors?
I think we've already talked about that pretty clearly. But I also think that I think it's time for everybody to step up and push back. I think as long as we're willing to be guided by those elected officials and who are making all the wrong decisions and buying into the false economies and the false solutions, that we are complicit in the crime against nature. And that's important. There were times in my lifetime in the 60s when wars were stopped by students taking to the streets, young people leading the way. And then in this time, there is an attempt by this present day government to say that students in the colleges cannot even raise their voices. That's when you get louder. That's when you push back harder. That's when you step into the streets. That's when you call your neighbors and your family. My entire family is involved in this change time, and in one form or another, all of my children, all of my grandchildren. And I think that that is a necessary thing. How do we, you can't depend on just the indigenous people telling you how to walk the red road. You have to create a road, a path that fits the place that you're in right now. Are you living in a city? Start a community garden. Are you living in a gated community? Get to know your neighbors. What do you want? How about doing those statutes that are the rights of nature, recognizing that we as human beings are not separate from nature, but we are nature itself? If we drink, if we breathe, if we eat, we are nature. That's what these bodies are made of. Recognize that. Grow something. Grow your own food, even if it's in a little jar in your kitchen window. Again, get out there and make a difference. Raise your voices. Don't be, what was that slogan in the 60s? If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Take responsibility and take leadership. Because as long as we believe that those old white guys in the federal governments, wherever we are our leaders and they're making all the bad decisions, shame on us. Shame on us. We're part of the problem that allowed them to be put into a decision-making place that's making the wrong decisions. If they were making the right decisions, I'd say, whew, okay, I'm just going to sit back and relax with my babies around here, get my gardening done. But as a woman who wants the generations to come, not who just wants it, who demands and will make a difference for the generations to come so that they can eat, drink, and breathe, which is not just a human right. It is the rights of nature. It is the manner in which the Creator, the great mystery, set everything into motion, is so that there would be a loving interdependence between all things.
Yeah, yeah. We have to fight for the rights of nature as you fought and won for the Ponca people. And social movements are really crucial and have proven to have success. So we have to invest in that, the younger generations. And it has been a very inspiring conversation. Thank you, Casey. Do you have any final message you would like to drop to our listeners?
One thing I love to remind everybody is that we're all warriors. Warriors are peaceful protectors, loving beings that stand for what is correct. So warrior up.
Thank you so much. It was a great honor to have you with us, Casey.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope you have a great day, and I hope we can talk soon in a future episode. Thank you so much.
I'll be ready, and maybe I'll even figure out how to use my
Yeah.
camera.
I feel so blessed today speaking with you. I'm so honored.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Today, I'm closing this episode with a beautiful quote by Casey. We have to honor the natural laws. We have to realize that we are not protecting nature. We are nature protecting itself. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's meet again soon. And meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share our podcast with your community. Let's act together for a better now.